now that we've barely scratched the surface of gender construction, I also want to look at relationships themselves and ideological practices within relationships. Both films deal with cheating. And there's this idea that when you're in a relationship, you own the other person. And that comes very clearly through with her. When Theo learns that Samantha has conversations with over 8,000 people and is in love with 641 people, he is devastated by this information. And then we know on the other side that Karen, as I just talked about it, is also devastated by Henry cheating on her and not coming home. So clearly there's this idea that when you get into a relationship and you're committed, there's an ownership of each other. And monogamy is expected. Now, that seems like the overall idea that ideology puts out around us. But the truth of the matter is, everybody actually thinks a little bit differently about it. I was rather surprised when I taught Goodfellas back in the summer of 2020, and we were discussing Henry's relationship with other women, and one of the students, a female student, discussed that Henry is successful. He does have the right to other men, and Karen should be accepting of that. And I didn't realize that people thought that way, that success means that you do have a right to have more women. So I found that really interesting. I bring this up now because there are different ideas floating out there. And with her, there's this really interesting line that I wrote down when it comes to Samantha. She says, "The heart expands inside the more you love." And I'm paraphrasing here, unlike a box, it gets filled up. A heart expands. And so we get this whole new idea that maybe relationships aren't about one and one coming together, but in 2020, it's about expanding our notions of relationships. We are having those discussions. I mean, there are YouTube channels, I haven't really watched many of them, about thruples and the rules they have to create to make a thruple work. And so her starts expanding our ideas about relationships and the idea of love, which is very different from 1990 Goodfellas, which feels much more traditional in how relationships are thought of. So I wanted to bring up those ideological ideas on relationships just to get your brain thinking. And now, for the last topic on ideology, I thought about power itself and how one achieves power. And the characters in Goodfellas, as we are told, are all blue collar, living in New York City, in a tough life. And the only access to power and economic comfort is through working in crime. And it puts into high relief the American dream and how one has access or doesn't have access to the American dream. And so this group of Italians and Irishmen, clearly there's this idea of the immigrant in there without it being fully said and stated, but it's there, especially when you listen to some of the very strong accents of, like, I think it's Tommy's mother, who's played by Martin Scorsese's mother. There are these strong accents. And you think about the immigrant experience and how hard it is to raise yourself up through economic security. But I also find it interesting that we have Karen's character who discusses that she is Jewish and her parents have no understanding of Henry Hill's life. And Karen is totally attracted to Henry's power and his money. And she never talks about them having a lot of money. She's like, you look past it because they're just trying to get a little money. But we know they're getting a lot more than a little money, especially when we get to the Lufthansa incident. So it's interesting to see how this character of Karen, who is very traditional, changes over the course of the film when it comes to economic comfort. And as I think that's where I want to go, where it comes to economic comfort. Whereas we look at her, there's no criminality. Everybody has a job. Everybody has a socially acceptable way of earning money. And so I feel like that sets into high relief the difference between Goodfellas and her. The New York that we see is very dingy and dark in Goodfellas. And the LA that we see in her is all bright and I can't get it out. Skyscraper filled and sun coming through. And it just shows to me the difference in economic comfort and the access to power that these two very different sets of people have. So, there's a lot that I unpacked in terms of ideology in The Real. And I feel I haven't really tied it all together fully because really I'm trying to get your brain thinking about the reality of film and what's inside the real. I hope you take a lot away from this In the Real episode, and I know I've stuttered a little bit here and there, so please forgive me for that. I hope I have grown your mind, and I look forward to taping another In the Real for you. Bye-bye.